back. My name is Lynn. If you haven't been around here, this is a podcast called Hope for Today. It's to give you hope and to know that you have a future and that God is in it. How much better does it get? So my question for you today, and the title of today's podcast, and by the way, yes, different office, much brighter. I like it. But my office is having some renovations. So we borrowed somebody else's office so I can come and chat with you, grab your coffee. We're going to need some today, your tea, whatever you want. And we're going to talk about, are you barely hanging in there? So in your walk with the Lord, oh boy, there are times when, do you ever just feel like, I just can't anymore, or I've done everything I could possibly do, or I know God told me to do this, and I've laid it all out there, and I'm working towards exactly what He told me to do, but I'm getting nowhere. You ever feel like that? I remember when I was a kid, there was something that my dad, no ifs, ands, or buts, he knew God told him to do it. And he did everything he could do, and it was sacrificing a lot on his part, a lot, in many areas of his life. And people, I don't want to say made fun of, but it's like, you sure you know what you're talking about? Are you sure this is what God has called you to do? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And I remembered, listening to my dad, he, up until the very end, the very, very end, he never lost faith in what he felt God has called him to do. It was kind of like the last, almost like the day before. Boy, we can hear a jet plane going overhead. Woo, do you hear that? That's loud. Okay, let's let the plane fly and then we'll continue to talk. I guess our armed forces are getting those planes out today. So it was pretty much the day before, or maybe the day of. I was a kid, so I don't quite remember all, but I remembered him getting a little weary. And I remembered a friend of his, Jimmy, called and just felt the need to call my dad. Now here, it'll be a little layers to this. So if you feel God prompting you to call somebody and tell them, hey, hang in there, God's got this, or I just felt you needed a word of encouragement today, or not sure what you're going through, but God's laid you on my heart, call, email, text, write a letter, whatever you got to do. Go visit them in person, because you don't know what God's doing. We have to remember, okay? We need to be excited. Now, we just heard these crazy planes, right? That's just a sign of life being chaotic, nuts, crazy. I don't know. Is your life perfectly calm? Can you wake up and nothing goes wrong? I don't think so. We watch the news, we go crazy. We listen to people, we go crazy. We go to the grocery store, we go crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. We live in a crazy world. But put that aside, we have to look above that. God's at work. We tend to, as Christians, sit on a pity pot of, did you see the news last night? It means the world's coming to an end. And we take it in such a negative way. But we have to remember, this is God's plan. This world is not here for eternity. The planet Earth is only here for such a time as this. And the Lord will be destroying this earth and creating a new earth and the rapture and all the rest. But in order to get to that part of the story, we have to live through this part. So we should be excited when we see things and not a negative. And when you feel God's prompting, you need to run with that. Not take your time and, let me think about this. Should I call? No, do it. So that person called my dad, and my dad was like, how did you know I needed a phone call? And I don't know what this conversation was about. I don't even remember the whole story. Again, I was a kid, this is adult stuff. But I remember when my dad got off the phone, he said to my mom, I know that I know that I know God told me to do this. And I remembered just the conversation between my parents. The word sacrifice kept coming up. We're having to sacrifice this and we're having to sacrifice that. And the last, maybe, 10 days, I love listening to stories. I love listening to conversations. I don't mean in a nosy way. I just always find it fascinating what people talk about, what their perspective on things, just that. But in a conversation with several people and 2 devotions that I actually did, this same Bible story kept coming up. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was at a big event for someone, and in a conversation with somebody, actually, it wasn't me and that person, it was 2 other people at the table I was sitting at, and I just happened to be like, it was not a big table, so you couldn't help but listen. This same story came up, and it was about Abraham and Isaac. Now, Abraham walked with God, so much so that God told him, I need you to do something. I need to get your son, grab some wood and kindling, and I want you to go and prepare an altar, and I need you to sacrifice your son. Now, humanly speaking, this is unheard of. This is gruesome. This is, child abuse. This is not normal, okay? Put that aside. We're talking about a Bible story that actually happened to a father and a son. And Abraham was clearly instructed on what he needed to do. And he did it. He went up, he took his son, he went up, prepared the altar, tied his son up, got the kindling going, fire's ready to go, and he is ready to sacrifice his son because this is what God said you needed to do. And right before, a minute before midnight, yes, basically, you say a minute before midnight, God sent an angel and stopped Abraham and said, stop. And he provided something in his son's place, a lamb that he could sacrifice and have a time of worship for the Lord. Now, our situations in life and our circumstances are not, God's not asking us to sacrifice our firstborn on an altar in that gruesome type of a visual picture. But where are you today? And is God calling you to do something? Does it mean sacrifice on your part? I don't know how many times. I wish I was in my office, because next time we're recording in there, I know some of you like to look around and see what I have. I have a sticker on my computer, and it says May 6th. And 4 years ago, in January, God told me something, a little whisper. Huh? Me? No. What? He didn't give me details, but he told me to be prepared for May 6th. That's what he told me. As specific as May 6th is, that's what he told me. No details other than I have a job for you to do. And I knew that he told me, so much so that I got a little yellow sticky note, which is on my computer to this day, 4 years later, on May 6th. Well, I'll just tell you this. May 6th came. Yep, phone never rang. Nobody came in my door. Nothing on my cell phone. No emails, no texts, nothing. Went home from work. Waited all day. Nothing. It was probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm like, did I misunderstand God? I know what he told me. You ever get like that? You just know that you know? And it was about 10 minutes, 12 minutes to midnight. I get a text from one of my bosses saying, I forgot to catch you at work today, and I just remembered. I need you to do such and such. It's a new ministry. I want you to be involved. This was 4 years ago. It was almost minutes before midnight on May 6th that this ministry was presented to me. And from there, the rest is history. Does it seem so far out of reach, something that God has told you to do, or unreal, that thing that he's asking you to do? Does it seem like there's no way possible? I'm sure to Abraham, it seemed like there was no way possible, but he was obedient to God. God in this moment needed to see the faithfulness of Abraham. He needed to see the obedience of Abraham and the obedience and faithfulness of Isaac as well. Isaac could have ran off, fought his dad, whatever. There was a relationship there that had been built. I don't know how many times God has asked you or me to do something. And sometimes it is a minute before midnight because he wants to see how faithful we will be, how obedient we will be. Now, the Lord has created us. He knows the way we think, the way we interact with people. And, you know, my dad used to say the word faith is a muscle. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And faith has to be worked on. My husband always says that when he does counseling, he tells the men that he counsels that you have to understand, when you get to know the Lord in a personal relationship, the more you get to know him, the more you trust him, the more you're willing to obey, and the more that your faith grows. And if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, or it's very, talk to him once in a while, read the word a couple times a week, maybe a month. Yeah, I don't actually know the last time I read the Bible. All those types of things. If you're not building a relationship with him, you do doubt him. You do have less faith because you don't trust him, because you don't know him. When you have a more intimate relationship and you're walking closely with the Lord, that's when your faith is built. That's when that foundation is built. That's when that trust is built. Do I have that down pat yet? No. I actually, as I put this together, I felt so compelled to tell you the story, and I don't know why. Let me read in Genesis 22. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham, and he said to Abraham, and the story goes on from there about, and Abraham said, yes, Lord. And then the Lord had a conversation. And Abraham was, yes, Lord. And then God had a conversation with him. And in the end, the angel came and said, stop. We have another plan. So if maybe you're not familiar with that story, or maybe it's been a while since you read it, go to Genesis 22. But I also want to read you a verse from Isaiah 41:10. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you in my righteous right hand. Do not be afraid. I am with you. Boy, I don't know how many times I start out, I'm all excited. God's got something. I'm going to do it. I heard the whisper. I'm making my plans. Oh, and then I just sit there and I kind of hesitate. And I'm like, I don't know. Was this the right thing? Is it not the right thing? What do I do? I'm going to close with this story. My husband was born and raised in Africa. He's a missionary kid. His parents were missionaries. There was wars going on in the country. There was family on this side in the States that needed help. And my father-in-law got a whisper from the Lord, it's time to go. They were serving in that country. They were serving as missionaries. He had 6 kids in tow, and the kids were all little, and God said, time to go. It's time to go. Now, right now, it's time to go. So they sold their house, and they packed up a little, probably, I don't think they could carry much with them on the plane, but they carried up the little bags. They had their passports, but they had to apply for a visa to leave the country. So they have no home. They have 6 kids, and they have little bags packed, and there are people on this side of the country waiting for them. The night before they were supposed to go, my mother-in-law said to my father-in-law, we don't have our visas. We cannot leave the country. And my father-in-law said, we're going to the airport, and we are waiting on the Lord. My father-in-law had such faith. He knew that God told him, you're leaving the country and you're leaving tomorrow. That's it. And, my mother-in-law, I remember talking to her about this, saying she knew what God told her, but there was that feeling of, now she's got 6 kids. They got, they can't take furniture with them. They can't take lots of belongings with them. They have to take a little bit and come to this country pretty much empty-handed and start all over. But to be sitting in an airport with 6 children that were young, with no visa and have no other place to go but to go forward, but we don't have our visas. And now we're talking many decades ago, a long time ago, that this happened, probably 50 years ago. Things weren't as quick as they are. Yeah, text, or check an email. There was none of that 50 years ago. And you're out in Africa where things were not as speedy anyway as they are here. And they waited on the Lord. And sure enough, the day they were leaving, the visas showed up. A minute before, I think that was seconds before midnight. Seconds before. Where are you? Where are you today? Is God calling you to do something? I want to know. I want you to be excited. Don't get wrapped up in the negativity and all the junk that's around you, whether it's in people, the news, the places you go, the things you see. You need to focus on the Lord and know God has called you for something. It might mean sacrifice. It might mean a test of your faith. Don't forget, your test that you go through turns into your testimony. You are going to have a new testimony to share with someone on what God is doing in your life. All right, guys, we're going to catch you next week. We're going to be talking about good or great and where do you stand?